Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the UGAsports.com Quick Take. I'm your host, Jason Butt. And hey, one day away from the Heisman Trophy. Been a while since anybody could say, let's get ready for the Heisman Trophy with the Georgia player. The last time this happened was way back in 1992. I was just a little kid. I can actually remember this. It was Georgia getting ready for the Citrus Bowl when Georgia and Ohio State were set to play, and Garrison Hurst was up for the Heisman. Of course, he did not win that year, but which is quite funny because even though he was a Heisman finalist, that year did feature a major Heisman upset. Now, that's what the premise of this quick take is. You know, what the Stetson Bennett have a realistic shot at winning the Heisman Trophy. First, before we go into the history, because I believe if you want to look forward, you have to look back first. But let's look at the history. Let's look at the odds right now before we go into the history of Heisman upsets. And this is what we're working with at the moment. Caleb Williams at USC, despite the fact that USC got destroyed by Utah in the Pac-12 championship, Caleb Williams is the big favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. His odds right now are minus 2,500. Now that is quite remarkable for a Heisman Trophy finalist. It signals that Vegas they believe that he has it in the bag, and Caleb Williams' numbers are through the roof. And even in a losing effort while injured against Utah, Williams threw for 363 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Even though you can make the case, when you lose by that much, and the defense didn't come to play for USC, but that's not Caleb Williams' fault. But at the same time, this is he plays in an offense. Look at past winners of the Heisman Trophy. Kyler Murray is a great example, obviously. Baker Mayfield, a great example. Lincoln Riley's offense puts up numbers. That said, there's quarterbacks that had really good seasons and were deserving of the prestigious award. So you don't want to take anything away from them or anything like that. This season, Caleb Williams, for instance, has thrown for 4,075 yards, 37 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. So the numbers speak for themselves. He has been truly great in a lot of games. But then again, has he played the competition that some of these other quarterbacks have? Is he in the college football playoff like some of these all of the other quarterbacks that are up for this award are? And is he? And should he just run away with the Heisman just because he has the best numbers? I think sometimes we look at the Heisman as and we just end up picking the guy who has the best numbers, at least of late, because there have been some upsets in the past that fit the Stetson Bennett model. All right, so let's look back at some of the greatest upsets. One that comes to mind, actually, let's go right back to 1992, the year that Garrison Hurst was a finalist. And oddly enough, that year, Georgia was getting ready to play Ohio State, which they are about to do this year too, although it's the stakes are a lot bigger this time around. In 1992, Marshall Faulk was somebody who 1,758 yards from scrimmage. He was a guy who was obviously in the NFL, did the same thing. Great running back who could catch the ball out of the backfield. Had 1,630 of those were rushing. Possibly San Diego State, where he came from, kept him from winning the award. But Gino Torretta ended up winning the Heisman. Now, Miami was undefeated in the regular season. If I recall correctly, I actually should have looked that up beforehand. But Gino Torretta and Miami, they were, I vaguely remember this as a kid. I shouldn't say vaguely because I definitely remember, because I remember watching the Sugar Bowl that year when Miami played Alabama. And Gino Torretta had an absolute dreadful game. But, of course, before that game, he and his 56.7 completion percentage ended up winning the Heisman. And that shocked a lot of people in those days. But he was, the quarterback on the best team in college football. And so, you look at present day college football, and Stetson Bennett has had a great season. It's not like he's had these paltry numbers and just kind of was handed the Heisman Trophy for no reason. But that was considered a major upset. Gino Torretta, and I'm sure a lot of it had to do with where the school that Marshall Faulk went to. Then you look at the pro careers, and Marshall Faulk was the best player in college football, just didn't have the major school recognition, which is strange because it's not like smaller school guys hadn't won before. You look at Andre Ware, you look at Ty Detmer. So it was unfortunate that Marshall Faulk was unable to win that season. Another one that comes to mind, this is probably arguably the biggest upset. And Jason White over Larry Fitzgerald in 2003. Larry Fitzgerald was hands down the best player in college football as a receiver. I mean, nobody could handle him at the college level. Again, similar situation. He went to Pittsburgh. And then Jason White, who was, he's a good quarterback. But I don't think anybody was thinking that Jason White was going to go on and be an NFL quarterback. Nobody was thinking that he was the best player in college football. Yet, here we are. Jason White ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, 20th in completion percentage that year, 7th in passing, 14th in yards per attempt, had a loaded team around him. Meanwhile, it was pretty clear, Larry Fitzgerald going for 1,622 receiving yards and just dominating the game at the collegiate level. That was just the biggest snub, at least. Depending on how you look back and think about it, you would have to say that was also a pretty major upset. And then lastly, this one isn't there's two more, actually, I want to say. There's one that's not that big of an upset to me, but definitely one worth pointing out. And this one, to me, fits more in that Stetson Bennett model. Granted, this player was considered a first-round pick and ended up becoming one, and that's Matt Leinart in 2004, defeating Adrian Peterson for the Heisman Trophy. And Peterson at the time was he was a freshman. So, and the Heisman voters weren't awarding the award to freshmen just yet. And Adrian Peterson had 1,937 total yards, 15 touchdowns. And, but Leinart, 3,332 yards, 33 touchdowns, with, again, one of the better teams in the history of college football around him. Matt Leinart ended up winning, 15th nationally in passing yards that year. So, and of course, they had the run game, Reggie Bush, Lindale White. So they were very, very, very balanced. And so that, to me, fits more in the Stetson Bennett mold, where voters said, you know what, like, this guy is deserves it for whatever reason. Quarterback, best team. Yes, there's talent around him, but he does everything to get the job done. Leinart ended up becoming a first-round pick. Stetson Bennett probably won't. So somewhere in all of that is, you probably combine a little bit of Gino Torretta, a little bit of Jason White, and that those guys weren't ever going to be, high round picks. And then, of course, Lindale White with just a great cast around him. And I think that's kind of where you see Stetson Bennett. And then, of course, the one that a lot of people point to as possibly being the biggest upset is Charles Woodson as a defensive player, beating Peyton Manning in 1997. I think a lot of people thought Manning was a shoo-in, and Charles Woodson ended up coming away with it. Just his ability to lock down one side of the field. I think Charles Woodson winning it almost did, and the fact that Michigan was they were undefeated going into the Rose Bowl, because you look at what Charles Woodson did and you think, well, why didn't Champ Bailey end up getting a closer look? And Georgia wasn't an undefeated team looking for a share or the national championship, and what was one or two seasons later after Woodson won it. So all of those players in mind, could there be a Heisman upset brewing? Quite honestly, I think the fact that Stetson Bennett is in the mix, the fact that Max Duggan is in the mix here, and they are getting the second and third best odds. We said Caleb Williams minus 2,500, and it drops. Max Duggan plus 2,000, Stetson Bennett plus 3,000, CJ Stroud plus 5,000. Seeing CJ Stroud at plus 5,000, I don't think he has a shot. I don't think they're giving it to CJ Stroud. I think the fact that he lost to Michigan and didn't play that well, that cost him the award. But then Duggan and Bennett, their performances in the conference championship, I think, elevated them tremendously. And it makes you wonder if there's a Kyler Murray situation happening where Kyler Murray, a lot of people thought it was Tua's award the year that Kyler won, and then Kyler went bananas in the SEC champion. I'm sorry, in the Big 12 championship, and ended up passing to for the award that season. So the fact that Stetson's up for it, one, it's remarkable. The story, it speaks for itself. I think I can't help but think Caleb Williams runs away with it. I think there's probably a lot of voters who voted beforehand. Should the Pac-12 championship keep him out? I mean, maybe. It's an offense where you're going to put up yards regardless. You're going to put up yards when you have a bad game. Even you're going to put up touchdowns when you have a bad game. He was hurt too. Still tried to will his team. So maybe people cut him some slack there. I think Max Duggan is an interesting case study because I could see him gaining voters even though they lost because in the Big 12 championship because he single-handedly almost brought his team back against a top 10 team in that game. And if we know anything about the way the world, I just don't mean like Heisman voting or college football or anything. The way the world has changed is we are way more captive of the moment and prisoners of the moment than we've ever been before. And so the fact that Stetson Bennett had an electric game against LSU and then the fact that Max Duggan almost willed his team all the way back, it makes you wonder how many votes are taken away from Caleb Williams, given to those two. Usually when it's a runaway for the Heisman, they only invite 3. The fact they invited 4 does make me think that this is a closer race than maybe it initially was thought to be. I mean, it's still hard not to expect Caleb Williams to come away with this. It would not surprise me one bit, though. It really wouldn't surprise me if either Max Duggan or Stetson Bennett. More so, I would lean Stetson just being I think the Southeast voters would maybe give him give him an edge there. I also think that your Northeast, your not really your Midwest, but maybe your Southwest voters too. I don't know how many would lean toward Duggan, and I think that there could be some siphoning of the votes here, and so. And then, of course, there truly is. I don't mean this as a conspiracy. I do think there's a bias against West Coast players. Marshall Faulk being a great example, Matt Leinart being the exception to the rule. I think that history has shown that Reggie Bush too being the exception to the rule. But history has shown that when you are not the best team in the country and you are a player out west, typically you don't have you don't get as much of the benefit of the doubt. It's going to be interesting. I mean, this is a year with the Heisman where you can make a great case for everybody. And yes, there's one favorite that, it appears to be a runaway, but I think if it was as big of a runaway as, a lot of us would think, there would only be 3 being invited. And instead we have 4 invited to New York for the ceremony. It'll be interesting to watch. It'll be fun to watch. It's going to be cool to see Stetson being there, given the story that we've all known, talked about at length, from walk-on to JUCO to being a scholarship back at Georgia as a last-second recruit, then being a backup again to 5th string to starting to 3rd string to starting, giving the job back to JT. And then coming back in as a starter due to injury. And then next thing you know, he holds the job because he just, did above and beyond. They kept trying to not give this guy the starting quarterback job. He ended up getting it anyway. Yes, he's 25 years old. People love to point that out, but everybody has a different journey. And that's just the way it lined up for this kid. And so, I say he's a kid, and he's 25. So anyway, that'll wrap up this episode. It'll be fun to watch tomorrow and see how it all unfolds. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please smash that subscribe button. Share this with your friends. Go to the UGAsports.com dog vent and join the best community for Georgia sports fans on the World Wide Web if you haven't already. Thanks for tuning in. You guys have been awesome. I've been Jason Butt. Y'all take care.